The story begins showing the Indian government will repeal Article 370, which grants Jammu and Kashmir special status, in 2019. The news has an impact on Qadir, a cancer-stricken Pakistani army general who decides to exact vengeance on India. He signs a contract with Jim, the leader of Outfit X, a private terrorist organization. Meanwhile, Pathaan, a vulnerable RAW agent, and his senior officer Nandini established the Joint Operation and Covert Research (JOCR) unit, which recruits agents who have retired from trauma and injury but still want to serve their country. With the approval of RAW Joint Secretary Colonel Sunil Luthra, Pathaan and his team travel to Dubai to foil Outfit X's plans to attack the president at a scientific conference, only to discover that their plan is to kidnap two scientists, Dr. Sahani and Dr. Farooqi. Pathaan tries to stop Jim from attacking the scientists' convoy. A fight ensues, and Jim escapes with Dr. Sahani while Dr. Farooqi is saved. At the headquarters, Luthra reveals that Jim was a former RAW agent who was declared dead years ago but actually faked his death in order to seek vengeance against his country for allowing Somalian terrorists to kill his wife and unborn child. Pathaan discovers the code word, Rakbij, as well as the fact that the deceased in Dubai were ex-secret agents/soldiers, and their money was transferred to Rubina Mohsin, a Pakistani doctor in Spain. He travels to Spain and is apprehended by Jim's men, where he discovers that Rubina is a former ISI agent. Rubina attacks Jim's men and flees with Pathaan as Jim leaves his hideout. Later, Rubina reveals that Rakbij is in Moscow, where Jim has fled after stealing the ring. Before Jim, the duo travels to Moscow and steals the Rakbij. Pathaan and Rubina gain access to the tower holding the Rakbij and steal it, but Rubina betrays Pathaan and has him arrested by the police. It is revealed that Jim used Rubina to manipulate Pathaan into stealing Rakbij for himself by exploiting his emotional weakness. Pathaan is transported to prison by train but is left to die at the hands of the inmates. He fights the prisoners until Avinash, Tiger, Singh Rathore arrives to save him, as Nandini informs him via Morse code. Pathaan and Tiger engage the cops and convoy in a gunfight and flee. Pathaan travels to Africa 3 years later, captures Jim's henchman Raf, and flees. He later meets Nandini at his Russian hideout and tells him about Jim purchasing 2 Sabre missiles, after which Nandini reveals Rubina's location in Paris. Pathaan meets Rubina, who reveals that the Rakbij is a smallpox-designed mutated virus that will kill a person in a matter of hours, and Jim intends to spread the virus with the reluctant assistance of Dr. Sahani. She also admits to feeling guilty about betraying Pathaan without knowing her country was planning such heinous attacks. Pathaan and his team attack Jim's lab and manage to recover 1 orb containing the virus, while the other orb is with Jim, who escapes with it. After Rubina reveals the location of Jim's lab, Pathaan and his team travel to the Indian Institute of Contagious Diseases, ICD, to develop a vaccine for the virus, where Jim summons them and informs them that the orb has already spread the virus in the lab. Pathaan is determined to catch Jim after the infected scientists and Nandini die in the lab. To prevent the virus from spreading, the lab is destroyed in a blast. Jim issues a 24-hour deadline for the evacuation of Indian soldiers from Kashmir. Pathaan questions Raf about the missile's location, and he discovers that it is in Afghanistan. Pathaan, Rubina, and his team attack Jim's base by luring Jim's soldiers into a trap, where Rubina kills Qadir before activating the virus. Pathaan uses his jetpack to pursue Jim, and they crash land in a cabin. Meanwhile, Rubina discovers that the Rakbij is not in the missile, but is in a passenger-bound plane landing in Delhi, which she informs Pathaan, who discovers that Jim has the detonator. To prevent the plane from landing in Delhi, Luthra contacts air traffic control. Pathaan and Jim fight in the cabin, and despite being stabbed by Jim, Pathaan steals the detonator and disables Rakbij, saving the passengers, and killing Jim by throwing him off the cliff. Pathaan is then reinstated and appointed as the head of JOCR, while Nandini is honored posthumously for her bravery. In the post-credits scene, Pathaan and Tiger are seen thinking about retiring and suggesting young agents who can replace them, without revealing their names, and the movie also ends with this scene.